Afternoon, everyone. My name is Alicia Scallon. I'm the co-CEO and head of events at Women of Influence. I want to thank all of you for tuning in this afternoon for our first ever Women of Influence virtual event. These are very strange circumstances, to be sure, and typically by mid-April, we'd already have met several times. I can tell you we're really missing seeing you, our community, in person. But that said, we feel very lucky to be connecting with you all virtually today. We typically would start our events with a land acknowledgement for the city we are gathering in. Today, we have people tuning in from across North America, but we don't want to forego this very important element. So we're asking everyone to take a moment to acknowledge that the land they are on, from Toronto to Calgary to Vancouver, is the traditional territory of many nations and is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. For those of you who are just tuning in now, welcome to the first of a 5-part series entitled What Now? How Entrepreneurs Are Adapting to a New Normal. Over the next 6 weeks, we'll be sitting down with leading entrepreneurs from coast to coast to find out how they are pivoting their own businesses successfully and tap into their expert advice on how others can do the same. We want to thank our presenting partners, BDC and Cisco, for producing this programming with us. Now, while the crisis has affected various industries and businesses in different ways, one common thread for all has been HR, which is why it was a no-brainer to tackle this topic first with none other than Jamie Hoobanoff, award-winning founder of the Leadership Agency, who is joining us from her home office in Toronto. Now, just before I introduce our guest today, a few housekeeping items that will allow for the best possible viewing experience. We do recommend that you switch your screen to grid view, which you can do at the top right-hand side of your video screen. The second half of the event will include a live audience Q&A, so please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box on the right-hand column of your screen throughout the conversation, and our MC will get to as many of them as time permits. Finally, if you have any technical questions, Stephanie Patterson is on standby to help you and assist you with anything you may need. Please feel free to type them into the chat function speech bubble on the right-hand side of your screen, and she will be there to assist you. So without further ado, please welcome our MC today, Liz West, former broadcasting personality and speaker coach, along with our first guest, Jamie Hoobanoff, founder of the Leadership Agency. Over to you, ladies.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Hello to everybody that's joining us. I want to wish you a very warm welcome. This is the first ever Women of Influence virtual event, and it seems like now we're all experiencing a lot of firsts. This is going to be a good one. My name is Liz West, and as Alicia said, we have all in this strange and uncertain time. One thing we do know is true, though, we are all in this together. Connectivity and information sharing could not be more important. And that is what this next hour is about. So I want to welcome our very first guest, Jamie. Are you there, Jamie?
I am here.
Fantastic. And before we dive into the hard-hitting questions, tell me, how are you doing personally? How's your family?
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Liz, and warm hello to the Women of Influence Network and community who are joining us today virtually. I want to share a very big thank you to you, Women of Influence, Cisco and BDC, for launching this event series and asking me to be the first participant and guiding us through this. I'm very excited, so thank you. To answer your question, my family is great. We're all in good health, we're safe, and we really are looking forward to seeing each other again. So thank you for asking. I have struggled throughout this. My team has struggled, my company has struggled, my clients have struggled. And what I can tell you is that I myself am a stronger person and better leader than I was even before this started. And you know, every single day I have been pushed to my limits and have been, you know, really relying on my gut instinct to, you know, guide me primarily through all of this. And it has definitely strengthened me. And for that, I'm grateful.
I'm sure a lot of people listening right now can relate to what you just said, for sure. I want to begin by talking a little bit about your career, the background in your career with the audience, as I think you have a really unique perspective. You know, you have over 15 years experience in the HR industry. You've certainly seen uh, organizations weather a lot of circumstances beyond their control. So would you start by telling us a little bit about the early career working as a top recruiter with corporate clients? And have you ever seen anything like we're experiencing right now in business?
Yeah, so when I graduated from college, I was hired as a recruitment coordinator with a company known then as 1-800-GOT-JUNK and now known as O2E Brands. And I went on to become, recruitment manager. I was promoted 3 times. I hired over 100 people during my time there. I then went on to work for monster.ca and sell recruitment and HR technology to some of the most elite and enterprise level accounts all throughout Canada, and had the opportunity to work with some of the most prolific and distinguished HR teams. And I learned a lot, like a lot from working with these companies. And that was all during the financial crisis from 2008 to about 2011. And I really do struggle to find any identical similarities between the financial crisis to what we're experiencing right now with the COVID-19 crisis from an HR perspective.
So, you know, how did those leading organizations come out on top back then? You know, now it seems like all our answers are based, or a lot of them anyway, are based in technology. Maybe not so much back in 2008. What was the advice that you were giving? And would you be able to give that same advice today, do you think?
I think that the there on a lot of levels, there's probably more differences than there are similarities when you compare these two crises. The financial crisis was very complex and really hard to understand, and probably a lot of us, myself included, struggle to really understand what that crisis was. Versus the COVID-19 crisis is very easy to understand, and it permeates every aspect of our lives, from professionalism to our personal lives. And on a global scale, I wasn't a small business owner in 2008. I was a new grad essentially. But like I said, I learned a lot from the companies that I had the opportunity to work with. And I think what I learned then, that I believe is more true now than ever, is that how you treat people today during a crisis, and I mean all people include your vendors, your partners, your employees, your customers, that will have the most lasting and substantial impact on the success of your business in the future.
All right, we're going to fast forward to 2017. You decided to venture out on your own because you realized there was this gap in the marketplace for a startup recruitment agency, and so you founded the Leadership Agency. And the mission is to help fast growth startups build the most impressive companies of our generation. You source the top tier workforces. So tell us a little bit more about your company.
Yeah, thank you. So the Leadership Agency was founded with one purpose, and that's to help our clients lead. We believe that every hire that a startup makes has a material impact on that organization, and we get to help make those hires. And so that's very exciting for us. We only work with companies that we feel or can see ourselves working for ourselves. So companies that are committed to diversity, committed to inclusion, disruption, innovation, those are all the types of companies that we work with. And some examples of those clients would be, like in the Toronto or the Canadian market, would be companies like Stack Adapt, Skip the Dishes, Venna, ND Sleep. So those are just to name a few. And our team has over 20 years of combined experience in this industry. And we interview on average anywhere between 8,000 to 10,000 people every single year. And we've helped make over 1,000 hires across North America, which is very exciting for us. We really do believe that we get to help build some of the most impressive companies of this generation.
As well, you get sort of you're ahead of the curve when it comes to what exciting, new app is coming out for us, so you can jump on that and share it with your friends. Um, in under 3 years, so it's only been since 2017, now it's 2020, not much time has gone by. You've already expanded your operations from Toronto to New York City. You've won multiple awards. Congratulations. And it's interesting because not only are you an HR advisor in the fast growth startup sector, you're actually one yourself. You are that entrepreneur, the one that you work with, you have become. And now you're facing the same challenges as your clients. So when COVID hit back in March, what was your initial reaction? And how did it impact your business model? What were your biggest concerns?
Yeah, honestly, we acted very quickly. There was no doubt about it. But I mean, we shut our offices before we were mandated to do so. But if I'm being really honest, I know that I wish we would have acted sooner. And the reason I say that is because we asked our team simply, do you feel safe coming into work? Do you feel that your health needs are being met by coming into work every day? And when I received the results, it surprised me and it saddened me simply because they didn't feel safe. And it was becoming really clear that their anxiety was increasing in terms of having to come into the office every day. So it was an eye opener for me. Hindsight is always 2020. I think we as leaders, we need to ensure that we are connecting with our team on a deeper level, a more meaningful level, always, and not just during a crisis. And being an entrepreneur isn't just about the title. It's not about just owning a company. It's really a state of mind. And that really became clear to me as I needed to maybe get in touch with my team sooner and not just assume because I was feeling safe going to work that they were as well. So it was definitely a learning opportunity for me. But we moved quickly. We shut the office immediately. We released a statement to our community and our network, letting them know that service levels would not decrease, and that we were acting in accordance to what we should all be doing. We went with a one-on-one communication strategy with our clients. And then we immediately went into financing and protection mode, which included identifying weaknesses and gaps in our business, which is really challenging as an entrepreneur because you have to be brutally honest with yourself about what your weaknesses actually are. We've had to lay off our team. We've had to secure financing and immediately close any gaps in our accounts receivable. So those were our 3 areas of weakness immediately that we identified. The reason we went into action in terms of financing immediately was because we know and we knew then that we wanted it and needed it long term. Our goal in all of this is to come out of it an even more amazing company that is fueled with capital and a growth plan so that the team who've helped build this company have a place, an even more exciting place to come back to. And I think as leaders, during a crisis, it's imperative that we don't wait for all the answers because you're not going to get them likely. And let your instincts kick in, take a few risks and move quickly, but with purpose. And, trust your intuition is my best advice to anyone.
How do you know how much to tell the people that work on your team?
That's a great question. I think that it's going to come down to understanding what your limits are as a founder and as an entrepreneur, what your comfort level has been, and then pushing yourself a little bit further because communicating is one thing, over communicating is another, and it's not always comfortable. But I do believe that it is really required in a situation like this that, communicate to your comfort level and then push yourself just a little bit further, I think is really, really important.
You work with the fast growth startups. Many are female entrepreneurs. And apart from being here today, you've also been offering one-on-one consultations since COVID-19 hit. So tell us, what are some of the key trends that you saw emerging through those conversations that you were having about these uncertain times?
Yeah, I think that the most common topic or dialogue that everyone's having is adjusting to working remotely. That if you're not a work remote culture already, that there definitely are some adjustments that have to be made in terms of expectation, communication style, and comfort level. I think that if you're, and like myself, like I can't remove myself from that equation. Our company is a work from office culture, and so it is a huge adjustment. So some of the things that I've learned in having, a wider array of conversations with people, and not just within my own team and advisors, is that communicating and then over communicating is key in working from remote or working remotely. Sorry, sharing information in advance, during, and after a technology connection, like a video connection, that encourages people to connect on all levels. I think that during meetings, to ensure that you have your closed captioning on, because you can't make assumptions that everyone has a Wi-Fi connection that is properly going to support them throughout this, or they may have difficulties hearing. And so you really want to support everyone, during this time. I think another really important thing, commonality in these conversations, is that showing compassion is really, really key, and ensuring that everyone has the right setup to be equally productive, knowing that right now there are some barriers that you may not even know about your team. And some of the common barriers include inadequate access to technology, having the right proper space, for them to be productive in this new work environment, and even the basics such as food and access to healthcare. My advice is to really leverage and learn from your peer group, from the community in terms of content. Like right now, companies like Shopify and JustWorks and publications like Harvard Business Review and Mars and DMZ, they're all producing great content on this topic.
You touched on the idea of working remotely and your team, and how do you add to the connectivity through communication? How do you keep morale up, beyond just the day to day? How do you, in this time where there are a lot of people experiencing a real array of emotions, aside from just the regular day to day of work?
Yeah, this is something I'm seeing everywhere. Social media is more prevalent now in terms of absorption of content and ideas and just passing of time to some degree. But I'm seeing it everywhere and I'm learning about it. But I think that the most common trend I'm seeing right now is any activity that brings the team together. So video conferencing is replacing, going for drinks or doing team building, like an escape room. Like you now want to learn new ways to replace that team activity with virtual connections. And some of the themes that I'm seeing are anything from karaoke to cooking contests. There's a lot of Tiger King themed events that I'm seeing, and all of these things involve a video technology platform, obviously. Something else that I've noticed and I'm feel probably more connected to in terms of a culture opportunity is that companies are allowing their employees to work flex time. It's so important because a lot of our employees and peer groups don't have access to proper childcare right now. And I think these are things that speak to your culture and have a more impactful impression on people's engagement with your culture when you lead with integrity and compassion and flexibility in these times.
Wonderful. Some leaders are also concerned about how they deal with making the tough decisions, and that can include layoffs. Do you have some advice around that?
I do. And I think I'll start off by saying that layoffs are inevitable during this time. As entrepreneurs, we have a responsibility to our visions of these companies that we run. We have a responsibility to our people that work for us, and to our shareholders, and to our clients. And part of that responsibility is understanding what needs to go into protecting your business and to eliminating or supporting your expenses and finances. And I know that part of that is layoffs, and it's inevitable. I've had to experience it myself. And I know that I want to emerge from this with a stronger company than it was before, and be able to bring back the people who helped build this company. And part of that is layoffs. And I know that everyone is experiencing that on some level right now. So my advice is to consult with an employment lawyer immediately, because there are some very big differences between termination, the types of layoff opportunities that are available right now. So consult with a lawyer immediately. Do your layover via video conference. If you can, don't do it over the phone. Lead with integrity and transparency. And what I mean by that is that this is not a termination. So be really transparent about why you're booking something in their calendar that maybe wasn't there before, that can be really triggering to somebody. That my boss or the founder of the company just booked 30-minute video conference in my calendar without any real specification as to why. And that can be really triggering. So be really honest and open as to why you're booking this in their calendar. Let them know that they can ask questions. Let them know that you're going to be sharing the reasons as to why these decisions have been made, what the plans are for the future. And during the layoff, really reiterate that this is not a termination. There's a very big difference, like categorically big difference between a termination and a layoff. And a lot of it just comes down to language and really ensuring that your employees know that they are being laid off and not terminated. Be very organized in your delivery. Make sure that you have your sound bites ready. Make sure that you allow them to ask you questions. This is really important. Set your expectations and have the paperwork ready for them to sign. You don't want to create gaps in between delivering this really heavy and emotional at times message to a next step. So be ready for it. We put together a handbook for our team. So that gave them access to links on how to apply for any government assistance, any resources that are available, things that surrounded mental health access as well. Like, this is triggering for a lot of people, and we want to be able to support them and guide them through it.
So really, again, it comes down to communication. Lots and lots of thought out communication. Money, huge concern for many businesses who may feel kind of alone actually when dealing with this new reduced revenue. So are there resources that leaders can turn to around financing?
Yes, definitely. And I think the first thing I can recommend is consult with your accountant. If you have an accountant, consult with them immediately. They are very dialed in to what the CRA is communicating. We personally use Welsh. They are fantastic, based here in Toronto. Explore all of your financial options. So what I mean by that is there are going to be many, which is a good problem to have, but explore every single one. So options such as the BDC, the EDC, your loan, your investors. If you currently have investors, talk to them. We have a very valued partnership with the BDC, and we have chosen them to be our financial provider in terms of this short-term and long-term situation. What I've taken from this journey is that financing, I should say, is available. And it's available at an unprecedented rate right now. And 6 months ago, this financing and this access to this money at these rates weren't there. So it really comes down to, like I said before, answering some really tough questions about your business, what you want and what you need long term and short term. Obviously, we can't ignore that. And really making sure that you choose something that is in line with your business long term, and so that you have something for your team to come back to. But I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is know your terms. So not all financing is the same. And so if you don't know your terms, then ask more questions. Be really proactive, be your own advocate, and really be heard in terms of the questions that you have and the concerns that you have. And know that a lot of things are negotiable. So if the terms don't work for you, then negotiate and ask more questions.
Thank you. In a little bit, we're going to be going to our audience to take questions. So that's in a little while. If you've got one, please send it in. Before we do that, though, you had described, Jamie, how you've got a very glasses half full approach. I think that's what I'm taking away, and that you already see the benefits of, yourself, what you've learned from this experience in terms of being a leader. And, there's got to be a silver lining, let's hope. So what do you think are some of the opportunities that are going to come out of this whole experience that businesses and human beings have gone through? What are some of the new normals going to be?
I think that some of the new normals in a professional perspective will be that how we interact with each other professionally, whether that's developing product or a company or a brand. I think that at the forefront of that will be a higher level of empathy. How we engage and how we expect people to spend their money with our company or on our product or with our brands, I think will be different. It's already different. It really is, and so I think that's very exciting. I think if we, turn back the clock a little bit, I think we'll realize that in 2008, or, from 2008 to 2010, 11, financial crisis brought a lot of really cool disruptors and startups to the marketplace. And I think that we'll continue to see that. I think that, companies will start to lead with a people first mentality if they aren't already, which is really exciting. So I'm personally really looking forward to what's next and seeing my family.
Of course, me too. All right, what is next is some questions for you. Are you ready, Jamie?
I am ready.
Okay, perfect. All right, the first one is, how far ahead are you planning? Do you have tips to help prepare for the post-pandemic future? That's a great question.
Yeah, I'm personally planning nonstop. So it is a 1 week, a 3 month, a 6 month, a 9 month, like constantly, like nonstop planning. But I think the short answer to that is 12 months would be my short answer. So it's when I look at my finances and I look at my business development strategy, and bringing my team back, it's definitely been what is the next 12 months and how do we get there? And so that would be my recommendation, is like secure your gaps and your challenges that I talked to you about before. Short term, identify what they are immediately. Once you can wrap your head around that and be able to address it and plan for it, then start planning for the next 12 months.
Okay, great. Here's the next one. What about employees who are requesting layoffs in advance because they'd like to take advantage of the government benefits rather than working? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I personally have not experienced, I'll just maybe frame that question. Are these essential or non-essential workers? I think that's a very different answer to those questions, or to that question.
Let's say they are non-essential, and then we'll move to essential.
Okay, so non-essential, I think that I can't see why someone would necessarily want to get laid off if they have an opportunity. Literally, we are experiencing unprecedented amounts of layoffs, like millions of people, millions. So I think that if you have an opportunity as a candidate, or sorry, as an employee, to work and to thrive and to really prove yourself in these times of need, like do it, go for it, run with it. And I think that if, as an employer and as a business owner, to really empower the people to see it that way. I think if you have somebody who wants to self-select for a layoff versus work, that's a business challenge all in itself that you have to address. It's a human people aspect challenge that someone's not connecting with why they would want to work for your company. Give them the option, but I think that there's a bigger problem to answer there.
Okay. I think one of the pieces of news that I'm certainly waiting for is, when are we back to business as usual? You know, when does society get to flip around the close sign and have it say open again? So for a business owner, what are the steps they need to take to prepare for that opportunity when the sign says open again?
Yeah, I too am really looking forward to that. And, you know, I think as a business, the first thing you need to understand or to plan for is a strategy that's in line with your revenue model. So if you have a run rate or a sales cycle or something that is going to require you to have a lag or a delay in being business as usual, you have to plan for that. So if you bring your whole company back and it is another 6 to 8 weeks before you are generating revenue or profitable again, and you didn't plan for that, you could be in even more trouble as a business than you were during the crisis. So really understanding your revenue model, your ecosystem, and your buying journey, you know, and really planning for that.
Here's a really interesting question. I'm glad it was asked. How do you measure and evaluate performance of people that are working remotely? You don't know what they're doing all day. You know, that's the reason we have offices in many ways. I think it's just getting everybody there, and you could see who's doing what, you know, all day long, 9 to 5. It's not like that right now. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I think that goes back to something I had you know, talked about earlier in really communicating and over communicating your expectations. So what I mean is that how we evaluate each other on a daily basis when we are in the office, let's just say, you know, it's really tactical and, you know, quantifiable things that, you know, we sort of take for granted or we don't really know that we're doing. Like, you know, does the person show up on time? I can visually see them showing up on time. You know, they're coming into work. They are engaged, you know, culturally, they are contributing positively, they are doing their job, they are, you know, certain things that, you know, we've been tuned in to use as an evaluation method. That whole world has changed. Like I mentioned earlier, like some people may have to take care of their children. Some people may have to take care of, you know, a loved one who's not, they may be sick themselves. None of those things indicate someone's performance. So you have to create a whole new benchmark in terms of performance. And it has to be something that is in line with, you know, empathy and compassion, because you can't use those gauges anymore to evaluate performance. So setting really clear expectations and creating a new set of expectations in terms of how you evaluate employees. So it's not the usual. So if there's a task or a project or performance related, quantifiable and measurable aspects of their job, use that and only that.
I think working remotely, I think it's taken everybody by surprise, because had we been asked, you know, 6 months ago, can you imagine doing your job, you know, from home or wherever up north? I think a lot of people would said, no, I could never do that. And yet here we are, we're operating remotely. We've done it. How much is this of this will stick? You know, do you think for small businesses, especially where they can, you know, suddenly you know, reevaluate their overhead? Do I really need that pricey space I've got? How much of this is going to stay where people are starting to work more remotely?
Yeah, you're starting to see a lot of stats being produced about this specifically. And I read yesterday actually that the prediction is that 41% of companies who are currently I think the benchmark was 75 to 100% work from office cultures will now start to migrate. And I don't know if that the indicator of that is because we will have to, like, I think the coming back to, you know, we're open for business will be something that's probably integrated, which will also impact those numbers because we're not going to be all able to come back to the office. So I think that it'll change the mindset of a lot of companies, mine included. You know, I've always been a work from office culture, and I know with certainty and without a doubt that this has changed my perception of the productivity and the capabilities that you know, we all have in terms of working from home.
I think it's also going to affect business travel a little, realizing we can do more without actually getting on the plane. So what percentage, let's talk about some good news. What percentage of the companies that your clients and the world you live in are actually hiring right now?
So not a lot. I'll start off by saying that it will be very, I think, strange to see a lot of companies posting jobs and talking about how, you know, great of a company they are to work for, which are all things that go into being able to hire effectively. You have to really know your brand and your strengths, and you have to be able to evangelize that and really talk about it, and be able to sell it. And I think that even if companies have an open requisition and job, that it would be sort of impossible climate-wise to do what's needed, you know, to do it effectively in terms of making those hires. And so,
You mean like actually meeting the individual?
well, I mean, you know, to make a hire, you have to post a job, you have to talk about that open opportunity, you have to source and, you know, network, you have to do all these things, all of which require, if you do it effectively, to really sell this opportunity and to really know it and to be able to talk about it. And it doesn't mean that companies who are hiring right now don't have great companies to work for or have great cultures, but everyone's not feeling that when their peer group has been laid off, or even internally there's been employees and team members that have been laid off. So the dial is moved in terms of how to approach the marketplace, even when you have an open job. I think the dial will move very quickly back to an open market and a free space to share all that information. So I think that it impacts our perception of the hires being made right now, or the companies who do need to hire. I think that there's probably people who are making hires or need to and want to, but just don't know how right now. But I can tell you that there's some very obvious industries who need people. And I think we all know what those are. It aligns with the essential services industries. But I think also too, there's a lot of really cool, fast growing startups that have actually raised financing during this time. And, you know, some really good places to check for that information are like BetaKit, Crunchbase. So, you know, LinkedIn is a really good place and network to find out who's raising money, who's growing, who's hiring. So there's definitely the information out there. It just looks and feels different.
All right, let's flip that around. So now let's talk about the person who works for an organization that perhaps they had thought about leaving already, or now they don't like the way they're being treated, so they think they want to leave. Is this one of those weird times that it's good to start to make connections and, you know, possibly job hunt? Is there an appetite from an employer's perspective?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. So, and I don't necessarily say yes as advice to anyone who's considering that or experiencing that. I say yes because I know it's happening. I know that these are conversations that are being had, because one common thread, it's that people are more available now in a very unique way than they ever were before. So you're not sitting at your desk in an office, you know, that you have to remove yourself from the space to have these conversations. There's more people online. There's more people who are available. So these conversations are organically happening. And yeah, I say take advantage of that. It doesn't matter if you are an employee who's currently working, who's not working. This is an opportunity to learn. And a lot of those learning opportunities do come from having connections and conversations and asking lots of questions. And I don't think that we'll be given that chance the minute that we go back. You'll be very, very busy and, you know, probably overwhelmed in a good way, but so take advantage.
Yeah, that's great advice. Talk about some of the valuable tools and resources for small businesses that they need to be accessing now to help them navigate this time. For example, a podcast, if you know of any.
I think, I mean, I'm a huge fan of podcasts, but I'm a true crime podcast junkie, so I don't really have any like business podcasts to
Okay,
recommend.
all
But
right.
I would highly recommend right now, like I said, there's a lot of content being produced. Content is something that we're really craving. It's something that a company can really produce right now because, like I said, we're very accessible. We're very much in desire of information and content. So people are producing like really good producers of content and information are producing a lot of it because we're here, we want to listen. So like I've said before, Harvard Business Review is fantastic. Forbes is a really strong place to gather information. I would say look at all, like if you're interested in the startup community in any way, whether it's you want to work for them or you want to learn what other people are doing because they are your peer group, you yourself are an entrepreneur and you want to learn about what some other people are doing, then look at all the incubators in your city. Look at all the companies where there's a large group or a portfolio of companies that are coming together to create subject matter expertise and producing content based on those expertise. Look at the investors. So go to OMERS, go to Real Ventures, go to Relay Ventures, and look what the content that their portfolio companies are producing. That would be another recommendation. If anyone wants, I'll put more thought into that and I can actually produce some links and some actual articles or some content producers that I think would be really effective.
That'd be great, Jamie. Um, let's say you've submitted a proposal or you made a pitch to a client right at the beginning of this the pandemic, right before businesses really had to stop working or start working remotely, changed everything. And the idea of like maybe calling them up, you're a little worried about it. Is it too soon? You don't know what's going on with them. Is there a sensitivity that we need to have right now around trying to get that business?
That's a great question. And I can speak to that based exclusively on my experience as a business owner. So I think when we were in the very initial stages of this, we went into, like I said, financing and protection mode. And part of the financing was new business development. What's that going to look like? There's financing that you obtain, and then there's financing in terms of revenue. And then you go into protection mode, and it's like, okay, I have to, I have to secure what revenue is potentially on the table, if there is any. And so part of that is panic. It's like, I have to develop new business. I have to reach out to everyone and everything in terms of opportunities that I feel are available. It's definitely the wrong approach. And we realized it very quickly, thankfully. It's not that we did like a mass outreach to our clients or to net new clients, but the reason why I know it's the wrong approach is because I had it happen to me as well. People were reaching out at very weird times in terms of asking me for a business that they'd never had of mine before, asking for increases on spend, asking for opportunities to connect that didn't feel organic or genuine. And, that is something that's so important right now, is to make meaningful connections. And my personal advice, if you're making donuts that no one wants to buy, then stop making donuts. And so it's take a beat, take a pause, because unless you have something that is essential or in demand, or that you could be wildly creative with in terms of diversifying what you sell and how you sell it, then just take a pause.
I think that's been the biggest challenge, though, is we're not used to taking pauses. As a society, we don't pause. We go all the time, and we're being forced to do it right now. It's a little bit easier, I find, a month into all of this, to take a pause. I've got another great question for you. What tactics do you recommend for onboarding new staff when that staff person is working remotely?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of this. So a lot of hires and offers were made prior to this. And I mentioned earlier, not a lot of people are hiring. I mean, that's a bit of a misnomer because there are hires being made. And what is attached to that is a virtual onboarding. And so that isn't something that a lot of companies, I myself have ever had to experience, but we are seeing it. And again, there's a lot of really good content being produced about this. So my advice and what I've seen to be effective is to come up with something that will effectively mimic your current culture. So for example, if on someone's first day, they have, a laptop and something that's branded to your company, whether it's a t-shirt or something that immediately gets them engaged with the brand and makes them feel welcome, to mimic that the best that you can. Make sure that they are immediately connected to all of the technology that you use and require for your business to be successful. Don't ask them or require them to source this information or establish their own connections to it. Be really proactive in terms of their onboarding. And like I said earlier, communicate and then over communicate. So right now we're experiencing a lot of delays in terms of shipping, and understandably. So if you're going to ship them a laptop, make sure that you do it as far in advance as you possibly can, because there will be delays and you don't want them on their first day to not have access to technology. So really proactively thinking about certain things, will really help with the ease of that onboarding. And then communicating and then over communicating. Make sure that the team that they're joining knows that on Monday there is going to be a new team member on our Zoom or WebEx meeting. So communicating and then over communicating, being really proactive, and ensuring that you can somehow extend your onboarding experience to them virtually.
When you have had to lay off your team, some or all of it, do you recommend still having those weekly video conference meetings and including them, or is it, you do leave them alone entirely until such a time where you can call them? And maybe you could speak to how you're dealing with your team right now.
I've wondered that myself, so I'm glad that you asked it. So what I've deduced from my experience is that it's best to just ask them, what do you want? Like, how can I best support you during this time? Is it, do you want to be left alone? Do you want to do these things that are going to help, keep us connected? And just leave it up to them is my best recommendation. I think one of the things that I established really quickly with my team is that, I would be providing them updates, because I really want my team to trust me and to know that they can be self-expressed. So if they are worried that, our industry is taking too big of a hit, the company that might not be there, that they can talk to me about this. And so, I sort of treat them like shareholders, not employees during this time. So, ensuring that I communicate with them weekly. I just sent my very first weekly update to the team saying, hey, here's what's happening. Here's what we've achieved in the last, 4 weeks. Here's what you can expect. Here's what we're excited about. So treating them more like shareholders, I think, is probably the best strategy.
So what would you say surprised you the most in terms of how you reacted to the whole changing of business, of having to close down our businesses and work remotely? And how do you stay motivated?
I think that for the most part, I've stayed motivated for my team. And I know that sounds like it's a bit of a cliche, but I really, truly believe that to get through this as a leader and as an entrepreneur, small business owner, there has to be something at the end of it, right? Because right now, what we're going through, and I think there's probably a lot of common emotions that are complex, that we're all going through right now, whether you are an employee or a business owner, is that what's this all for? Like, if it's to close the business, then why? If it's to keep the business going, then why, right? So if you've made the choice to really plan for the future and make this something that you can come out of stronger, that's what, likely is your motivator. And for me personally is my motivator, that everything I'm doing right now, all the sacrifices, all the changes, all the sleepless nights and all the things that we're all going through, it's all kept me motivated because it's important. And I've, made a decision that getting financing and doing all the things for the long-term future of the company. So that's what has kept me motivated.
Getting back to connecting and sort of the hiring or looking for new opportunities, LinkedIn is a great platform for making new connections. Right now, do you recommend that people accept every LinkedIn connection sent out of that panicky kind of like, I might need to know that person, I'm not sure yet, or there's a human being reaching out to me, even when you don't know the person? And this is something I've wondered myself. I feel like it's a strange time, so I don't know. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we actually get asked that a lot, outside of a crisis. And, what is the etiquette in terms of making connection? And so I'll give you some rules that I think that I sort of follow regardless of the situation. No, you don't have to accept everyone. You really don't. And that is really going to come down to how you gauge what is a meaningful connection, whether it's you have a certain amount of connections in common already, or look at this person as like an inspirational or admirable leader that maybe will be a meaningful connection at some point. So I think that, that will be up to you in terms of what you gauge, but the answer to that is no, you don't have to accept everyone. I think that, making connections on LinkedIn, there's a lot of, not even just LinkedIn, just in general, but I think that what happens often is that there's a misuse of people's request of people's time. Like, people will say, can we, and now this doesn't apply because we can't, but people will say, can I take you for coffee? Can we sit and talk? Can we meet? Can we have a call? In this case, it would be, can we have a Zoom meeting, or can we have a call, whatever it may be. And so I always recommend, don't ever ask anyone for their time. So if someone's asking for you for their time, you don't have to give it, and you don't have to accept that invite, because your time is really valuable, and it's really in your control.
From a perspective of someone who's working from home now, and they've created this home office, and yet, it's here all the time. It's really hard to necessarily to leave sometimes because it's here. How do you create the right boundaries for yourself to ensure that you are working the right amount of time from home and not working around the clock because you're kind of panicked, you don't know if you're going to be laid off, you don't know how if your company's going to survive, and you know what, your laptop's right there and your kids are driving you crazy?
Yeah. It's so true. And one of my team members, my VP actually, one of the things that she said to me was, I have survivor's guilt. And I didn't quite understand what she meant by that. And I didn't realize that I actually had it too. We had done sort of staggered layoffs, and, that's real. And what that does is it forced me anyways into working 24/7, not getting a lot of sleep, adrenaline to the max. And once you realize what you're experiencing and what's pushing you to do all those things, you can then start to incorporate, I have anyways, a much more regular schedule. And that, going back to the content piece, like, there's some phenomenal, like, fitness and well-being content being created right now that we never had access to before. So take advantage of it. The biggest thing for me is setting a schedule every single day. So I wake up at 6, I do my morning workout from 6:30 till 7:30, and then whatever it is that you want to do. Like, it doesn't have to be that, but setting a schedule has been really, really important.
Yeah, structure. Do you have any last tips for our audience? We've had some great questions, by the way. Looking for any last tips that you want to share, especially regarding the weight gain from being so close to the fridge?
That's real. So I think they're referring to it now as like the COVID-15. So
I think it's a COVID 30. It's not 15.
30,
it's 30.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago it was the COVID-15. Now it's the COVID-30. I saw this post yesterday, actually. It was about this influencer who's, a body positive influencer, and she couldn't fit into her jeans. And she was so disappointed about not being able to fit into her jeans. And what she said was so like real. She's like, here we are, like, half the world is getting laid off. A lot of people are sick. A lot of people are really challenged with their healthcare, and like, how sad is that? And here I am worried about not being able to fit into my jeans. So I think that that's just, embrace it. Have the banana bread, work out on a regular basis, and like, whatever, don't worry about it.
So it sounds like your tip is perspective.
Yeah.
Try and keep it in perspective, and this too shall pass, right?
Exactly.
Excellent. That's Jamie Hoobanoff. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thanks for being our first guest. I really appreciate it. You did a great job. And I want to say thanks to all of you who joined us today. I'm going to invite you to join us for the next installment of this 5-part event series. It's on Wednesday, April 29th. Our guest will be Debbie Fung from the Yoga Tree Fitness. Stay well, everybody. See you then.